Hey, this is the Voyage Cast Top Three, bringing you the headlines that shape your headspace, because mental health doesn't stop at the therapy door. I'm Eddie, your host. Today we're pulling back the curtain on American healthcare, where policies, codes, and money quietly shape the kind of treatment patients receive and what insurers actually pay for. We'll cover three interconnected stories: a whistleblower whose federal case was dropped, the hidden panel that defines every therapy session and psychiatric visit, and the financial backbone of the American Medical Association, which raises some really uncomfortable questions about who they really serve. So in May 2024, Dallas surgeon Dr. Eithan Haim was indicted by federal prosecutors. His alleged crime: violating HIPAA after leaking documents about pediatric gender care at the Texas Children's Hospital. Fast forward to January 2025, the case was dismissed with prejudice, which means it can't be refiled. By June, Haim was testifying before the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, describing what he saw as a systemic problem in gender medicine. And by late August, the Daily Wire released leaked video of a private call between the AMA president, Dr. Bobby Mukamala, Michigan Representative Brad Pickett, and Haim himself. In the clip, the AMA defended its stance on gender-affirming care. Critics argued that they were leaning on experts without seriously engaging dissenting voices. Now, why does this even matter? Because whistleblowers, whether you like them or not, are a symptom of a system under stress. If a physician can be prosecuted for speaking out only to later be vindicated, other clinicians may think twice about raising red flags. That chilling effect reaches mental health too. Guidelines for depression, ADHD, PTSD, gender care, they all rest on evidence. But if doctors fear reprisal for questioning policies, those guidelines risk becoming echo chambers. And for patients, the deeper question is trust. Can you really trust that your therapist or psychiatrist or medical doctor is following the science? Or are their hands tied by politics and financial pressures? Without trust, without transparency, people delay care, turn to TikTok or Reddit for answers, and the outcomes suffer. But who really owns the codes that run medicine? Every therapy session, every psychiatric evaluation, every family counseling visit, it all gets boiled down to a code. If you've ever seen numbers like 90837 or 90791 on an invoice, that's what those are. They're procedure codes. We use them all the time as therapists, especially when we're billing insurance. But here's the deal. These codes aren't government property. They're owned and copyrighted by the American Medical Association, licensed to Medicare and Medicaid, sold to every private insurer. The committee that writes and updates them is called the CPT Editorial Panel. As of July 2025, it has 21 members. Some are physicians, but several seats are held by executives from insurance companies, people whose job is literally to minimize payouts. Blue Cross Blue Shield has multiple representatives. Health First has a vice president on the panel, and one executive committee seat must always be filled by a third-party payer. Federal agencies like CMS, CDC, and FDA, they're in the room too, but only as non-voting guests. So why does this even matter to you? Because CPT codes aren't just paperwork. They're gatekeepers. If there's no code, there's no coverage. That means the future of mental health coverage, or any other kind of coverage, therapy, telehealth, maybe even AI-based treatments, isn't being decided purely by clinical evidence. It's being shaped by the financial interest of insurers. So when your claim gets denied and you feel like your therapist dropped the ball, the real issue may be structural. Maybe the code doesn't exist, or it was defined to limit reimbursement. That disconnect feeds frustration and fuels growing mistrust of the system itself. In fact, we as therapists have a really hard time with insurance companies because they dictate the kind of treatment and care we can provide, even if it's evidence-based. It may still be difficult to get reimbursement so we can provide that care. Well, the AMA often presents itself as the voice of the American physicians, but the money tells a bit of a different story. According to the AMA's 2024 annual report, total revenue was $513 million. Royalties and credentialing products, $326 million. That's more than 63% of the total. Of that, CPT coding procedure products alone brought in $281 million with a $252 million margin. And believe it or not, there's membership dues, and they're just a sliver by comparison. So why does this matter? Because the AMA is now more financially dependent on selling code licenses and credentialing products to insurers and hospitals than on dues from actual physicians. That changes the incentive structure, doesn't it? For mental health providers, it raises doubts. Is the AMA fighting for fair reimbursement or protecting lucrative licensing deals? And for patients, it deepens a suspicion that medical policy isn't shaped by clinicians on the ground, but by revenue streams at the top. When therapy and psychiatric care is already difficult to access, these perceptions of profit-first medicine becomes another barrier. Stigma keeps many from seeking help. Add a system that feels conflicted, and more people just walk away from care altogether. So what ties these three stories together? A whistleblower asking if the AMA is following the science, insurers sitting at the table that defines what counts as real treatment, and an association whose financial backbone is selling those very definitions to the insurers. The common thread is trust. Trust in evidence, trust in clinicians, trust in the system itself. And right now, that trust is frayed. For mental health, especially, trust is the difference between showing up or staying home, between getting care or slipping further into silence. Well, that's your top three in mental health news today. I'm Eddie with the Voyage Cast, bringing you the headlines that shape your headspace. If today's episode gave you something to think about, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star rating. It does help us with the algorithm overlords because it helps more people find us, so more people can find the show and get this information and maybe get a little bit of help beyond the office. All right, until next time, this is Eddie with the Voyage Cast. Thank you so much for joining me today.